Hello and welcome to the LG Fitness Podcast. This is episode 3, and to be honest, this episode is a little bit of an impromptu one. I hadn't had this one planned, and to be honest, I nearly didn't record this today because I was in a foul mood this morning. Basically, I've been having a bit of a shoulder pain for maybe 3-4 months now, maybe a little bit longer, in fact. And usually it's okay. Usually I can train around it. Usually I can do a little bit of upper body and it's absolutely fine. Essentially, I trained upper body this morning and it was an absolute shocker of a session. My shoulder was just really, really hurting and it put me in an absolutely horrendous mood, which I nearly then didn't record this podcast. But since I've been in that bad mood, I've managed to ring up the doctors and I've managed to get an appointment for today, which is great. I thought it was going to be weeks before I could get an appointment. So happy days. I managed to ring up and yeah, I've got an appointment in a couple of hours time, which is great news. So now I'm in a much better mood because hopefully I'm going to have some answers towards why my shoulder's been playing up for so long. So hopefully that's going to be sorted soon. And now I'm in a much better mood. So I'm going to record this podcast in a better mood because I think you wouldn't have got the best of me earlier if I'd have recorded this about an hour or two ago. So yeah, this podcast, like I said, it's a bit of a impromptu one. It's not one that I had planned. As you guys know, I like to ask you before I record the podcast to send in your questions so I can do a little bit of a Q&A at the end. And from last week's podcast, I had a few questions, and one of the questions that I got asked, I believe, deserved its own podcast, really. And that is why I'm going to do this today. So I've not really got anything planned. Like I said, I've got the question in front of me. I thought it was a really, really good question. And I wanted to discuss it in a little bit more detail because I think it's a really important topic, which hopefully you guys take away some, like, I want you to sort of understand it in a better way. I think when we talk about this topic, a lot of people have some preconceptions about it and what it means for them. But hopefully I can sort of break it down a little bit. So the question was, how important do you think genetics are when it comes to fat loss, muscle growth, etc.? Now, genetics, we know, obviously play a role in absolutely everything that we do. And certainly when it comes to fat loss, when it comes to muscle building, it's definitely going to affect how successful we are in both of those pursuits, right? But I think when it comes to genetics, it's probably not affecting it in the way that you think it does. And what I mean by that is a lot of people will think that their genetics are to blame because they can't get in better shape or they can't drop body fat because their genetics are just poor. Oh, my genetics are terrible, so therefore I can't build muscle, therefore I can't do this, therefore I can't drop weight, I can't drop body fat, etc., etc., right? And that is a self-limiting belief that a lot of people have, because if I was to ask you, do you feel like you're at your genetic potential when it comes to muscle building, when it comes to your physique? Are you at your genetic potential? The answer is probably no. So what you have to understand is, yes, genetics do definitely play a role. Of course they do, but it's still the same processes. It's still the same method in which we get results, regardless of your genetics. So, for example, let's talk about fat loss. We know that you need a calorie deficit in order to drop body fat. All right. You need to consume less calories than your body is expending in order to drop body fat. That is the same regardless of your genetics, whether your genetics are good, as some would say, or whether your genetics are not so good. The fact of the matter is, you need to create a calorie deficit in order to drop body fat. And in order to build muscle, again, it's the same sort of principles. We've got to make sure that we're training to failure with good technique. We're making sure that we're getting enough protein, getting enough sleep so that we're recovering, etc., etc. Now, those are the principles and those are the methods in which we go about those things. So that doesn't change depending on our genetics. And again, it's the same for people with certain conditions. So if you're a woman and you've got maybe PCOS, or perhaps if you've got a thyroid issue, again, those things will definitely affect your ability to drop body fat. However, the process of dropping body fat is still the same. All right. So even if you've got PCOS, even if you've got a thyroid issue, those things tend to mean that we burn less calories. So our calorie expenditure is then less. But the principle of fat loss is still the same. You still need to create a calorie deficit. However, where our genetics will play a role is everything around that. So for a lot of people, some people are going to be more predisposed to having a higher appetite. Therefore, it is harder for them to feel full. It may be that you have much more of a food thought process. So you think about food more, you have more food noise. Like I said, you're potentially predisposed to having a higher appetite, those sorts of things. So it's the things around it that our genetics play a role in that may or may not affect your ability to drop body fat, to build muscle. And of course, the way that we look is also going to be impacted by our genetics. So again, when you see people posting, whether it's a 30-day challenge or whether it's a specific diet or specific training routine, and sort of claiming that, or given the perception at least, that if you train like this, you will look like them. That's not how it works. If I was to take myself and another person and another person, if we were to take three different people, put them on the exact same calories with the exact same training plan and the exact same, even if they had the exact same lifestyle, after 10 weeks, 12 weeks, they would all look completely different, because the way that they would respond to that training, the way that they would respond to that diet would be very, very different. And that is where genetics will play a role in your ability to drop body fat, build muscle, etc., etc. So a lot of the times you see these Instagram influencers who have incredible genetics that are very lean all year round, because it's much easier for them to maybe it's easier for them to stick to a diet, because again, they maybe don't have this higher appetite or this drive to eat like other people potentially may do. And perhaps they just, their body responds better to weight training, and they just have a better ability of building muscle again than other people. And what tends to happen is you see these types of people more often on your social media feed, and that almost then becomes the normal of what you see. What you need to understand is these Instagram influencers that are ripped, they've got loads of muscle, and they're just lean all year round. That is not the normal. However, when you see it on social media over and over again, because these are the people that get pushed to the top of the algorithms, these are the people that you're going to see more of, because again, in terms of like aesthetically pleasing, you would argue that they have that physique that is top tier of aesthetics, if you want to put it that way. So when you see these guys or girls and they look incredible all year round, they're the ones that are going to get the likes, they're the ones that are going to get the views, because that's what essentially we want to see. As what, let's say, what we want to see. It's again what the algorithm pushes, and it's what essentially it is what we want to see, right? Because that's what we like, and that's how the algorithm works, right? So what it then does is then that becomes the new normal. But understand that that is not the normal. And again, a lot of these influencers will sell their programs and market themselves using their physiques, right? And what you need to understand is that if you follow their program, you are not going to look like them. It is going to take a lot of effort for you to look like them. And for some people, and this is the key with genetics, for some people, it is much easier to have a lower percentage body fat than other people. And it comes down to those factors. Like I said, it's how big is your appetite? Again, that's going to be a determining factor of your genetics. How easy, again, obviously lifestyle will come into it as well. But again, that's really, really key to understand, is that for some people, they're going to be more predisposed to having a lower body fat percentage as their sort of normal, if that makes sense. And you only have to look at people, your friends, your family members, all that sort of stuff. And when you look at people, everyone is in different shapes and sizes. If you look at someone's dad and you look at their build, again, some people are built, like a leaner, more toned physique, if you like. Some people are a little bit more broad. And again, how we're born, how we're shaped is all down to our genetics, right? That doesn't mean that we can't change it. That doesn't mean that we can't affect it. But again, the way that we look is down to our genetics. And again, our ability to build muscle, our ability to drop body fat is going to be affected by that. You only have to see like the kid at school that was like ADHD, even though everybody nowadays has got ADHD. But you only have to see that kid that is constantly moving, he's constantly moving around because he can't sit still. Usually that kid is going to be pretty lean, right? Because their energy expenditure is really high because, like I said, they cannot sit still. All right. And again, that is going to be down to your genetics. For some people, it's easy for them to sit still and do nothing all day. For other people, they have to be moving, they have to be doing something, they have to be constantly on the go. I would say, like myself, like I find that I can't just sit still for too long. I need to do something. I need to have my mind on something. I need to either be walking, I need to do this, I need to do that. So it's probably much easier for me to stay lean compared to someone else who doesn't have those traits. So that's what I mean when it comes to genetics. So understand that when it comes to dropping body fat, when it comes to building muscle, the principles of muscle building, the principles of fat loss, they're still the same. You still need to create a calorie deficit in order to drop body fat. You still need to train hard. You need to train with good form. You need to make sure that you're managing your sleep. You need to make sure that you're eating enough food in order to build muscle. However, everything around that, like I said, your appetite, your desire to move, if you like, and those types of things, those are the things that are going to be impacted by your genetics. So yes, it is going to be much harder for some people to drop body fat. It's going to be much harder for some people to build muscle, but understand that that doesn't mean that you can't do it. It might just take a little bit more effort than what you see from other people. So I hope that makes sense. This is a nice short one. If you do have any questions on this, please visit my Instagram at Lewis Graham Coaching. Feel free to send me an email, lewis@lewisgrahamfitness.co.uk, or visit my website, which is www.lewisgrahamfitness.co.uk. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.